Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell alerted President Trump this week about the consequences of declaring a national emergency to build his border wall, saying the measure could cause a political collapse and divide the Republican Party, according to two Republicans with knowledge of the exchange. McConnell RK told Trump that Congress could end up approving a resolution disapproving the declaration of emergency, the People says, forcing the president to think about issuing his first veto, in the face of opposition from his own party. McConnell delivered the message during a face-to-face meeting with the president on Tuesday at the White House, according to Republicans, who requested anonymity to describe the meeting. The two men found themselves alone and conversed without any present attendance. His meeting was not publicly announced. The majority leader's comments to the president came amid growing concerns of the Republican Party over the consequences if Trump declared a national emergency that would allow him to Congress and use the armed forces to build new walls along the way. U.S. Frontera, Mexico. Trump seems increasingly prepared to follow that path, saying on Friday that "I think there is a good chance of having to do that." Trump sparked the possibility of making a definitive statement on the matter during his speech on the State of the Union, telling reporters to attend Tuesday's speech closely. "I think you're going to find it very exciting," the president said. And Trump again rejected the possibilities of obtaining the $5.7 billion in financing of walls that he wants from a bipartisan congressional committee charged with producing a security solution at the borders that could prevent another government paralysis. The committee is working to reach an agreement that could be approved before February 15, when a temporary bill will expire if there is no action from Congress and Trump. If the measure expires without agreement, large parts of the federal government reopened on January 25, after a record funding lapse that would close again. "We are looking towards a national emergency, because I do not think anything happens," Trump told reporters at the White House. "I do not think the Democrats want security at the borders." The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the meeting of Trump and McConnell. A spokesman for McConnell refused to discuss the senator's private conversations. On the same day he met with the president, McConnell publicly expressed his opposition to a national emergency declaration by encouraging the 17-member parliamentary commission to find another way out of the impasse. "I am what it is for, what it means to avoid a shutdown and prevent the president from believing that he must declare a national emergency," McConnell said during his weekly press conference at the Capitol. McConnell's vice president, Senator John Thune RSD, told Republican Party senators at a private lunch that if they had problems with the president declaring a national emergency, they should create them in the White House, according to one of the Republicans and another person with knowledge of Thune's comments, who spoke on condition of anonymity to describe them. Trump's perspective using a national emergency declaration to build his wall divided the Republicans, with a number of them expressing concerns about the president that such a movement would be defined. Senator John Cornyn Artex, one of McConnell's main confessors, said this week that he opposes an emergency declaration, partly because of what he might encourage a future Democratic president to do. "We certainly try to communicate it to him," Cornyn said, referring to Trump. "And so, he understands our concerns as we express them, but I do not know if he shares those same concerns." Other Republican senators adopted a different view. "President Trump proposed logical solutions," said Senator Rick Scott Arthur. "If the Democrats do not negotiate with him because his trial is obscured by his pure hatred for him, then the president needs to move on." Lawmakers on both sides expect a national emergency declaration to be immediately challenged in court and to end judicial proceedings without producing a swift action on the border wall that Trump has long promised to Mexico. And a growing concern of the Republicans, which McConnell expressed to Trump in the White House, is that they were forced to vote a resolution of disapproval that sought to nullify the declaration, and that the resolution would pass. This will occur in accordance with the provisions of the National Emergencies Act, which determines that a presidential statement can be closed if lawmakers approve a joint resolution to do so. The Democratic House would probably move quickly to approve such a resolution, and the law provides that it would reach the plenary of the Senate, where only a majority vote would be necessary. At least half a dozen Republican senators are fiercely opposed to the idea of 1. At least half a dozen Republican senators are fiercely opposed to the idea of an emergency declaration, generating enough opposition for a resolution of disapproval to go through the Senate with the support from the 47 Democrats and a handful of senators from the Republican Party, a scenario on which McConnell warned assets. Republicans expect Trump to waiver the resolution, and that the House and the Senate would not be likely to muster the qualified majority vote necessary to nullify his veto. A resolution of disapproval on a presidential emergency declaration is rare, so exactly how the process would unfold is uncertain. But it could expose new flaws within the Republican Party on Trump's signature issue of a border wall, creating a portrait of the disunity that most Republicans would like to avoid. An emergency declaration would also risk further political harm to Trump, whose rate of disapproval increased significantly over the 35 days of partial paralyzation of the government, as more Americans criticized the president than the Democrats for the impasse. While Trump was on weak political ground demanding a wall that most Americans continue to oppose, an even bigger majority opposes Trump declaring a national emergency to build it. A Washington Post ABC News poll revealed that 66% of Americans oppose Trump using emergency powers to build the wall without congressional approval, 12 percentage points above the opposition to the wall in general. 7 in 10 independents and about 9 in just 10 Democrats opposed an emergency declaration to build a wall. Trump is housed between the political milieu and his own base, which embraced his demand for a frontier wall. Although Republican support for the use of emergency powers to build a wall was 20 points lower than for the wall in general, 67% of Republicans defended Trump's emergency action, including the majority that supported him strongly. Facing a deadline for a compromise, House Republicans on the conference committee plan to visit the border on Sunday and Monday. The White House's discussion of a national emergency declaration illustrated the dynamics that developed between Trump and McConnell. The two speak frequently, people familiar with their conversations says, with McConnell often providing Trump with forceful details about what a certain decision or course of action might mean at the Capitol. But, although they had maintained contact in particular, in public, their strategies diverged. Although McConnell has warned about the dangers of another paralysis or a declaration of a national emergency, Trump balanced both as possibilities. I think some of their goals are aligned, but the methods to get there may be different, said Senator Richard C. Shelby Arreola. Asked how they differ, Shelby replied, "You have to ask them, but I think it's very obvious."